Welcome to SFL This Week. Along with Mike St. Green, I'm Cameron Irvine. We're a bit of grumpy cats today. We are upset about just about everything in the world, but you know what? We're going to try to think positively, as Matt Wilson would have wanted. Mike St. Green, how you doing today? Long day for you at work, but at least we've got SFL all night long.
At SFL all night long, Cam. Yeah, long day. I'm doing pretty good. I've been thinking about something all week, Cam. But this show is called the Monday Night Spectacular, but I was really considering giving out approximately 600 plus participation ribbons and orange slices, and I think everybody will be happy that way, that no one got left out of being, mentioned in the spectaculars.
Listen, man, me and you, we're just not the participation trophy crowd. Even when we want to do it, we just can't. We gotta just award the best of the best around here.
Yeah, that's the way it works, Cam. And little do they know, I have a whole list of things listed here. Sometimes you get to it, sometimes you don't. But the spectacular stand out, and those are the ones that get mentioned pretty much early and often.
We're coming down. Say again. We're coming down to the to the end of the season here. We just have a few weeks left. Teams are still fighting for playoff position. We got a couple of big games tonight. We've got the DC Dragons, who are clinging to playoff opportunity, taking on the Houston Headhunters, who are right in the thick of it, 5-3. If they lose and fall to 5-4, they get up in that slosh in between about 10 and 15 right now. But if they can elevate their play and get to 6-3, you're talking about first round home playoff game potential, so that's a big deal. Then you got Mexico City, who feels like they've been off forever. They're the last team to play their 8th game. They're only 5-2. It's been a long time since we last saw the Aztecs, but they're having a good season. And then Lexington, if you love bumpy rides, the Miners might be a team for you, because Lexington, sometimes they play great, sometimes not so great. And we'll see what tonight holds for Lexington and Mexico City as well in the late block.
Yeah, Mexico City, they've been off so long, Cam, I've really forgotten, that they were even playing this season. But this is a big game for both teams. Mexico City trying to keep pace with the teams that are 7-2 currently right now in the league. And obviously Lexington, they're trying to stay ahead of the curve as well. 5-4 coming into this game. That 6th win will be huge for them, and big game. But as we said about Lexington in the past, we never know what we're going to get, but I know it's going to be exciting.
So we got plenty to get to here tonight. Ron Haynes will be here to preview all of the action coming up later this evening. We do want to, before we get started, just touch on the loss of yet another member of this SFL community. Official tributes will happen in game week next week, but we got news over the weekend that B. Robo, a 10-season SFL veteran, passed away at 55. Mike, we lost another one. It's very disheartening. 6 in the last 6 years. It's a byproduct of being such a large organization. You're going to lose people, but didn't want to lose another one so quickly. We had just lost Tabari Amaneaglin just a couple of months ago, and Robo currently on the DC Dragons. He will be playing tonight in his first game since his passing, and it doesn't get any easier around here, and we just feel for the Bossier City Steamers. Many of them knew him well. The Louisiana Revolution organization, who also lost Leonard Butler Sr. A couple years ago, and of course the DC Dragons as well. It's just it's just tragic.
Yeah, Cam. I actually didn't find out the news until earlier today, and it really hit me differently. I didn't know, Robo personally. I don't think I've ever, spoken with him. I had a conversation with him, but I did know him as a player, and he was a great player. He represented a great player in this league, and it just kind of hit differently just hearing that news. As you mentioned, It's really probably too often, but that's beyond our control. But definitely thoughts and prayers with his family, friends, players that have played with him in locker rooms that have shared locker rooms with him. Definitely our prayers, thoughts and prayers with all of those folks.
So we'll be talking about Robo a little bit more, obviously throughout the night and throughout the rest of the season, as DC's got a big game tonight against Houston. Let's start our recap with an incredible game last night, which I know many of you saw, but I still can't believe. The Bossier City Steamers at the Minnesota Legend. Minnesota trying to bounce back. And on third down and goal, Bossier City gets it done in the second quarter to force Minnesota to a field goal. Made it 3-0. The craziest thing about this drive, though, Mike, is that Minnesota went on an 18-play, 96-yard, 6.5-minute drive and only got 3 points. That's got to be some kind of SFL record. Colin Hart on their next possession in the second quarter, able to get into the end zone to go up 10-0. And this game was all Minnesota early on until this moment. Johnny Pickler on a third down and 13 fires over the middle to Vin Calia. It's 4th and inches, and Mike, Bossier City does the unthinkable. They fake the punt and they get it.
And they fake the punt and get it. They get it on the play, but they also had a roughing the passer call on this play that gave them extra 15 yards, Cam.
And from that moment, it was all Bossier City. Jeff Banfield gets into the red zone with about 4 minutes to go in the second quarter. And Bossier City, you could see it on the bench. They're starting to feel it. They're starting to believe, and they're playing for a lost friend as Dave Axis gets into the end zone for the score, makes it 10-7, and then it just became an onslaught. Jeff Banfield beats a few down the field, and how many times do you see Minnesota give up a play like this? It's almost never.
You almost never see it, Cam, but Bossier City, they were on fire. In particular, Johnny Pickler, over 300 yards passing in this game, 4 touchdowns. He was excellent last night, Cam.
Pickler to Calia, again, beating the defense of Minnesota. Minnesota was getting hyper-aggressive, trying to stop the run, put pressure on Johnny Pickler, and the Steamers delivered. All of a sudden, it's 21-10 Bossier City. Minnesota coming off a 24-22 loss to Denver just last week at home, trying to get back in a division contention. Okay, now we're all just showing off. Bogey Barr with the one-handed pick at linebacker. Everybody's playing well. Colin Hart lost the ball. How many times you see him fumble? He fumbled twice in this game. 24-10. Bossier City late in the third quarter. It was just all going wrong for the Legend.
Yeah, they could not do anything right, Cam, after that fake punt. And it seems like all the momentum was on Bossier City's side, and they seem to take advantage of everything that Minnesota was trying to accomplish.
But another special teams play switched the momentum in this game. That was a Bossier City fumble recovered by Minnesota. Jason France gets the touchdown. Now it's 31-17. After a stop quickly down the field, E.J. Minson, Minnesota, makes it a 7-point game. Then they recover the onside kick for the second straight week. With 56 seconds to go, they're in scoring position with a chance to tie, and Michaela Foraker again seals a game for the Steamers, and Bossier City is 6-3 in the crowded West or South Division. And I know everybody in the South Division, including you, Mike's going, you got to be kidding me.
That's life in the South, Cam. We expect it pretty much every season. It's going to be a bunch of winning records in there competing for that South Division title, and this season is no different. But quick note on Bossier City and a small note on Minnesota as well. Johnny Pickler and that Vin Calia connection, that was from a few seasons ago. We hadn't seen it since the London days, and man, these guys were on fire yesterday. Calia over 200 yards receiving and a couple of touchdowns. And as I mentioned, Johnny Pickler with the 365 yards and the 4 touchdowns overall. It was just an excellent day, and it was good to see those old London Knights getting back together and making a lot of noise. But real quick note on this game, Cam, as we saw the punt fake punt made a huge difference in this game, but it was also a play somewhere in the second half once Minnesota, got some momentum going for themselves. They had a 1st and goal from the 1 yard line, came after a pass interference call, and why you don't run Colin Hart 4 times in that situation is beyond me. They came out, threw the ball on first and goal from the one interception, and pretty much that it was game over after that.
And Minnesota has had some struggles in the red zone, especially in games that they lose. I remember a particular game against D.C. when they failed on 2 different 2-point conversions last season that came up a little short. So Minnesota now 5-4. We'll get to Denver here in a little while, but Minnesota ends the season with Arizona, Charleston, and Sin City. Not the worst schedule in the world. So the Legend I don't think are done just yet, but only one of those is left at home. And it's hard to believe. Arizona, they beat Oklahoma City this week resoundingly. They improved to 4-4. Is it possible that Minnesota loses 3 straight at home coming up this next week? That seems impossible that would happen, especially considering that coming into this season, they only had 5 losses at home in franchise history. So that would be surprising. Bossier City's last 3 at Vancouver and then hosting Washington and Houston. We've been talking about their very difficult schedule for the last couple of weeks, but Bossier City's stepping up and for the second straight week has won a very close ball game against a quality opponent.
Yeah, we're starting to see the Bossier City that started off the season 3-0, and this offense has been excellent. Didn't get much out of the running game last night, but they absolutely did not need it. As we mentioned, Pickler was on fire, and as long as these guys are playing like that, it's in particular in the passing game. Look out for the rest of the season for anybody that has to face these guys.
Let's get to a game that was almost flexed into tonight. That would be the previously number 1 seeded, spoiler alert, Washington Trident against the 4-4 Fort Worth Toros, who had suffered close loss after close loss, while Washington has triumphed in close win after close win. What would be the storyline of this one? Well, it was quickly apparent that this game was going to be won outside the 20s in the red zone. You see Fort Worth with a touchdown there, and Fort Worth with a sack there. Washington back into the red zone, throws an interception. It's 7-3 towards the end of the first half in a defensive slugfest. Then in the red zone again, Stephen Hacker just gets the ball across the pylon, makes it 14-9 at the beginning of the fourth quarter. 3rd and goal inside the 1 for Washington. Handoff to Christopher Dean. He can't get in. Look at the double tackle there. It looked like he was going to get in, and then Fort Worth got some help from a couple of teammates, forces another field goal, makes it 14-12. Originally, they called this a touchdown, but Fort Worth challenged. It got overturned. So that meant Washington was still trailing. They needed to get off the field, and Jet Zero, who had the first touchdown of the game, is able to seal the game up. Washington had 5 different red zone attempts. They scored no touchdowns in this game, and they lose 14-12. Fort Worth wins their first 1-score game of the season and improves to 5-4. Just another South team looking to make things interesting. And by the way, if Houston loses tonight, that means y'all would fall to last in the South, which seems almost impossible as well. So, what a big important win for Fort Worth to get that monkey off their back. And their strength of victory, Mike, is like 600. They are beating really, really good teams, and if they make the playoffs, I think they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah, that was an excellent win for them last night. Jet Zero has been a huge pickup for them in the offseason. He's really given them a certain toughness in that backfield, as we saw him get a little, goal line touchdown there, and he was huge in that final drive and keeping the chains moving and able to close that game out, which leads to questionable decision number 2 of the week, Cam. 4th and goal from the 1-yard line. You have Christopher Dean in the backfield. 7 touchdowns on the season. You're down more than a touchdown at the time. Well, no, you're
down 5.
Well,
yeah, and they cut it to 2. Yep.
Down, put your head. And you decided to kick and play defense, but that grinded out Fort Worth offense, kept the ball the rest of the 3:42 that was on the clock and killed that game. But I felt like they should have gone for that in that situation. They decided to kick, and it turns out they couldn't get the ball back.
So Washington falls to 7-2. They've lost to two very good teams, Vancouver and Fort Worth, here to start the season. Obviously, they're still. I mean, I can't imagine they won't be in the playoffs. They're right in this in the mix for a number one seed. Their final three games: Los Angeles, Bossier City, Pittsburgh. That Bossier City game is going to be really interesting if the Steamers can stay hot. Fort Worth is 5-4. They got Florida, Pittsburgh, and then they host Albuquerque at the end of the season. Some tough games. I think that Florida game next week's a put up or shut up game. For both teams. Is Florida still, a team that's chasing championships? Is Fort Worth, can Fort Worth shut the door on them and really kind of turn the corner of maybe some new dynasties emerging?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see that game next week. I'm really curious to see Florida, how they do coming down the stretch. Are they going to change some things up? Yeah, I'm really curious to see that. But the way that those two teams are playing, the way that they like to play, that's going to definitely be a knockdown, kind of grinded out, grimy, ugly type of game, and we're going to see who's going to come out on top.
All right, back to the highlights. Let's go to Denver, where the Denver Nightwings were hosting Atlanta. This was an important game for both teams. 5-3 Nightwings, 4-4 Swarm. Atlanta still in the mix for a division title. That East Division, the weakest of the five divisions this season after it was the strongest last season. This is a heck of a pass by Trellis Blanton there. And then Dwayne Salmons running it in the end zone. He's very familiar with the Atlanta Swarm. 14-0 at that point. Then Blanton is picked off by Anthony Wyo, and all of a sudden the momentum is starting to change here, and Atlanta has found a rhythm. Bryant Dynasty somehow gets rid of that. I still don't know how he completed that pass because there were two guys diving at him in the backfield, and Ryan Roosevelt takes it to the house and scores. That made it 14-12. Atlanta went for two. They didn't get it. But then Blanton, trying to get Denver right, throws another interception. I mean, just an overthrow. Denver looked discombobulated for the first time in a few weeks.
Yeah, that was a huge play at that particular time, Cam. I was in disbelief when I saw that play. I still couldn't figure out who he was actually trying to hit on that one. But, yeah, just an errant pass, and Atlanta took advantage of it.
Denver trying to run out the clock, but Aquantis Shine saves the Swarm. So instead, it's a 50-yard field goal and a chance for incentive money for the Denver Nightwings to go up 5 and put this game away, and that 50-yarder is missed wide right. That gives Atlanta life. They got no timeouts. They couldn't get into field goal range, so it's time for a Hail Mary. Bryant Dynasty just doesn't have enough arm on it, and Ryan Roosevelt catches it at the 20, but Atlanta falls just a little short, and Denver does it again, Mike. Not only do they get the win, but Minnesota loses now with 3 games left. They're 2 full games up on Minnesota because they have the head-to-head tie. We'll get to Indianapolis, who fell a little bit later, but yeah, this is now Denver's Central Division, and this might be the first time since Minnesota started their franchise that they're not going to be division champs this year. Denver has come in here and taken it.
Yeah, it's definitely their division to lose at this time, but as you know, that anything can happen. But Denver, that's in firm control of that division right now. I want to go back to the go-ahead field goal in this ball game as well. Off the boot, Cam, it looked like it was going to be wide right, and I don't know if field goals can be reviewed, but man, it didn't look like it. To me, it looked like it was barely in, maybe. But nonetheless, it was a great kick. They were able to hold on and win that game. And they're in firm control of the Central, and Denver looked like they're going to be, going back to the playoffs for the first time in a while.
Yeah, they're 6-3 in their last 3 games. I mean, they got at Charleston and then 2 home games against Houston and Oklahoma City. The Houston game will be really interesting, but that's the tune-up you want if you're Denver. Heading down the stretch of the playoffs. And, yeah, Minnesota has some winnable games down the stretch, but so does Denver. I think Minnesota has missed their window, and now they got to scratch and claw for a wild card. Atlanta falls to 4-5. And, listen, this team still could they win out? The Carolina game is everything. Carolina right now is 6-4. If you win that game, Carolina falls to 6-5. Atlanta would be 5-5. And if Atlanta wins out, they'd have the tiebreaker, right, over Carolina. Their last 2 games are against Oklahoma City and Nashville, 2 teams with a combined record of 0-17. So Atlanta still has a shot here, and they've lost a couple close ball games. They lost by 7 to Minnesota, 3 to Florida, 2 to Denver. They've had every opportunity. But that again, next week, that game against Carolina is going to be huge. And Week 12 schedule is shaping up to be the best of the last few weeks of the season.
But yeah, it's going to be a fantastic finish, Cam, and I think we are starting to see already this preview of what the playoffs are going to look like. It's going to be anybody's ball game, as we mentioned last week, and definitely coming down the stretch, we're going to see a lot of games that are going to determine who's going to get into this 12-team tournament, and once they get in, it's going to be anybody's to win. And you posed the question to me as could Atlanta win out? My initial thought was no, there's no way, and that was without knowing what the schedule is. But now, yeah, they can probably win out. We don't know what the tiebreaker situations are going to be with them, Florida and or Carolina. Obviously, if they did, they would have the head-to-head over Carolina. But going to be interesting to see. But yeah, right now, yeah, they could very well win out and possibly sneak in.
All right, so let's get to our final highlight of the night. That was Indianapolis at Vancouver, and this game started really sluggish for both offenses. Indianapolis's defense showed up. You know, the Ramblers are one of those teams, they're 3-5, but they don't necessarily feel like they're a bad team. They're still a high-quality team, but Ethan Flowers and the young Ramblers couldn't stop coughing up the football in this one. Russell gets an interception, still in a scoreless game at the end of the first quarter, and these 2 quarterbacks were going back and forth trying to figure out who was going to take control of this game. Early in the second quarter, Christian Brown, again in the red zone for Vancouver, fires another interception. That's Adam Nold with the pick. We're still scoreless in the second quarter, and you're thinking, man, this high-flying Vancouver team is going to have some problems today. But Ike McBride and the rest of this Vancouver offense picked it up, and they started to get the gears turning. 7-0 Legion on top at that point as McBride gets into the end zone. Big 3rd down and 10 here with 2:46 to go in the half. Mike, the Indy's in Vancouver, on the other side of the 50, and they just couldn't stop turning the ball over today as Ike McBride puts Vancouver up 17.
Yeah, this defense for Indianapolis, they played great, and we've seen that from them, occasionally throughout the season. But the rookie quarterback, he's going to have time to grow, and I look for them to next season probably make some noise in this league.
Yeah, Reggie De Niro started to take over in the fourth quarter, made it 17-14, back-to-back scores for Indianapolis, but down 6, 20-14. 4 straight incompletions from Ethan Flowers is how that game ended, and Vancouver improved to 7-2. The Legion got tested, but they're still number 1 in the league. It's not even close in point differential. They have gotten some really ugly victories, at least ugly for their opponents this season, and are a very powerful team. Indianapolis may have given some teams a blueprint on how to slow down that offense, but ultimately Vancouver's defense has been really great too. They took over that game against Washington, and they really helped their offense get out of a funk in the first half against Indy yesterday.
Yeah, Vancouver, they're a well-rounded team, Cam. The defense, they've been excellent pretty much all season long. As you mentioned, the highest point differential in the league, and a huge part of that is because this offense, the defense has been great, but the offense, they've been even better. When they're not passing the ball, throwing the ball around, they go to Mateo Pavado in that ground game. Like he was able to move the chains late in that game and pretty much close it out for Vancouver. And then Ike McBride, when you really need some tough, grinded out yards, she had a couple of touchdowns on the ground as well. So passing game, running game, defense, ball control, that's the way you win games, and that's why they're 7-2 and on top of the league right now.
Zach Benjamin's in the chat. He took over the Nashville Tempo offense, and they had an opportunity against Baltimore. They were winning that game for a little bit here in the second quarter, but Baltimore turned it on at the end of they got the 2-for-1 at the end of the first half and then scored again in the second half, and it just kind of ran downhill for the winless Tempo. But Baltimore got another win, and as we're about to see in this playoff picture, Mike, They are your new number 1 seed right now with 3 games left. Baltimore has quietly, they don't have to worry about Sin City too much right now. They don't have to worry about Florida too much right now. They don't have to worry about Arizona too much right now. And these are the teams that have been kind of in their way or at the top when Baltimore's been good. And now it's a whole new crop of teams that are going to have to, that are going to be gunning for the Vultures at this point. They won that game 30-10.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, kind of under the radar for the most part. You don't see anybody for this Baltimore team at the top of the league. You don't see the defensive line that used to be monsters over there. You don't see a lot of them leading the league in sacks. Ivy Irvin and Mac Chima, they're not at the top of the league in receiving. Wigmore's not top of the league in passing, but somehow these guys have kind of made their way to the top of the league. Let me mention Mac Chima as well. He had a huge game over the weekend, 183 yards on 7 receptions. But no one's in the top of the league for this team. But they are right there doing what they need to do, not turning the ball over. The defense still kind of swarms at you a little bit and turn you over, and then before you know it, you're down a couple of scores and. One team you do not want to see with a bye in this playoffs and an opportunity to win another championship are the Baltimore Vultures, because once they get in, man, their experience is going to take over, and that's probably the one team that could, when going in, you could say they would be the favorite in any game that they would play.
They've had a weird couple of months too, and I think that's part of the what's helping fuel that narrative of they're just kind of quietly doing their thing, because they got blown out by Pittsburgh in week 4, and that was kind of a surprise to everybody that they got shellacked like that. And then they only beat Chicago by 11, and they beat Los Angeles by 5, and they weren't necessarily crushing these teams. It just kind of feels like the Vultures are kind of waiting for their moment, and they're about to have their moment in a few weeks because they got Mexico City, DC, Florida after the bye. That's a very difficult way to end your schedule. No matter how those seasons are going for those 3 teams, they're always going to be gunning for Baltimore. All right, let's get to your Week 11 spectaculars on this abbreviated Week 11.
Spectacular. Who wore it best? And Cam, usually I kind of decide this by when I turn the game on, who catches my eye right off the bat. And that was the Denver Nightwings this week. Of course, I was like, well, they're going to need to win to get it, but they definitely came up with a tough win. And, I kind of like that electric blue that they had on it. It was really nice. It was a nice change up for them, and pretty interesting. So they win it as the who wore it best this week. And now let's get to the spectaculars. We're going to start in Fort Worth with Dexter Jackson, 15 tackles and with 2 tackles for loss for them. Also, as we mentioned, Vin Callier, 213 yards receiving and a couple of touchdowns. Mac Chima, 7 receptions for 183 yards. But who's going to get the spectacular of the week, Cam? My old teammate, my friend, my pal, Johnny Pickler, 356 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, in a huge win, emotional win for Bossier City. Johnny Pickler gets my spectacular player of the week.
And that takes us to the updated playoff picture. And you can see here on your screen, Baltimore is now in the number 1 position thanks to common games over Albuquerque. The Adams are 2. Washington falls to 4. Vancouver has that head-to-head, so they are your new division leader there. Denver is now comfortably leading the Central. In fact, if the playoffs started today, Minnesota would miss the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. You see, Mexico City, if they get a win tonight, they will continue to be the 5. But if they lose tonight, they could potentially fall all the way down to, I believe, 8th if Houston were to get the victory against the DC Dragons. You got the Dragons hanging on there at 15, but some big movers this week. Lexington and Fort Worth. The Miners have an opportunity to get to 6-4. And tussle with Queen City in that 10-11 spot. But Fort Worth did wonders for their playoff chances. As you can see there, a 601 strength of victory is actually bumping the Sin City Samurai, who have a strength of victory of 456. That's still a pretty great SOV, but they would miss the playoffs. And we'd have 2 teams with a winning record if the playoffs started today. missing the playoffs. Florida's also right there at 4-4. They're right there with DC. We're talking about just a few percentage points of SOV in that one. So what stands out to you now here in this updated playoff picture?
Well, first of all, I forgot to mention, for everyone else, I didn't mention participation ribbons and orange slices. Pick those up on the way out of the door. But yeah, this playoff picture. Let's look at tonight. Mexico City, Lexington, Houston, DC. Everybody's right here in this playoff picture, and it's going to be a huge two ball games tonight. If Houston gets a win, Mexico City loses. Houston leapfrogs them because of a head-to-head. Lexington, if they lose, they go to 5-5, and more than likely going to fall into out of the playoff picture. And DC right now, they're going to be fighting for their playoff lives as well. You do not want to go below that 500 line. This late in the season, that 4-5 would probably be a killer for them. So, two huge games tonight. 4 teams fiercely competing for these final 12 playoff spots, Cam, and it's going to be an excellent night, I think.
If Houston wins and Mexico City wins, that would be 10 teams with 6 wins with still 4 weeks to go, which means I don't think 6-6 is getting in this year, right? So we'll see what happens down the stretch, but right now, teams with winning records on the outside looking in. One of the interesting matchups, just playing the hypotheticals, Mike, is Bossier City, Queen City in the 7-10, because Bossier City hammered the Corsairs a couple of months ago. I mean, that was a dreadful, ugly game where Rob Noel went off, but I feel like Queen City's a totally different team. You got Mexico City, Fort Worth, and a big rivalry there at 5-12. That would be crazy as well. But you got Bossier City 1 game out of a first-round bye at the 7 seed. And Houston could be there as well with a victory here tonight against the DC Dragons. So, man, I'm looking at least, I don't know about DC at this point. I don't know about Minnesota. I'm looking at least 13 teams that I would put in as championship contenders right now.
Well, no doubt about it, Cam, and as you mentioned, 6-6. I can't remember the last time we saw 6-6 make it in for a minute, and I don't know if it's still possible. Man, it may take 8. I'm not sure, but 7 for sure. 6 is going to be kind of tough, just looking at what we're seeing right now. But a lot of these teams have to face one another coming down the stretch. We got a Houston and Bossier City matchup to close the season out with them. So, man, it's a lot of great matchups coming down the stretch. And man, in the next couple of weeks, it's going to be really interesting to take a look at this playoff picture and to see what's going to happen the final week of the season.
All right, it's time for Haynes Vision. Ron Haynes does a great job all season long for us. He is just, man, he loves this stuff, and we love him for it. He's got some player comparisons tonight, and it really does show just how even all 4 of these teams really are and how these matchups really are even. So let's take a look at DC and Houston. Their 2 quarterbacks, Shabazz Synergy and John Lakeman. Pretty similar stats. Synergy a little bit more efficient, but Lakeman maybe a little bit more explosive.
Yeah, Lakeman, he's going to be hit or miss, Cam. He's going to throw a touchdown, but he can also throw a pick or two. Houston is going to have to pretty much get pressure on Synergy tonight to get him out of his comfort zone.
Josh Slapp's not getting the touchdowns, but he's getting the yards. Then you got Connor Weston, who's been a great pickup for the DC Dragons. Not matching the Pittsburgh output, but he's, 1 touchdown, Mike St. Green. Come on, man.
I haven't seen the end zone. I have no idea what it even looks like anymore. But yeah, as you mentioned, Connor Weston, he kind of started off the season slow, but he has come on strong lately, and he's starting to pay dividends, picking up a huge pickup for DC in the offseason.
Nick Fargo lives in the backfield. Jason Peace lives in the secondary, and Peanut Say's getting more picks than Blake Prime, but both safeties are really strong. Mac Dre and Mike Wagner, 2 guys to watch up front tonight as well. For DC and Houston, 2 underrated defensive lines. They both can eat, and they could totally disrupt both offenses this evening.
There's no doubt about it. And one thing I like about that Houston defense, you never know who it's going to be. Mac Dre was mentioned right there, but then it could be Blake Craze, who's been a huge offseason pickup for Houston. It could be Evans. It could be Peace. It could be Incognito in the secondary. As you mentioned, Blake Prime. He's been huge for the Headhunters pretty much all season long. These defenses are going to get after you, Cam. And it's going to be interesting to see. How these teams come out and attack one another from the offensive side of the ball as far as how they attack these defenses. But this should be an excellent game tonight.
Now, I know you're going to pick Houston. You got a score for us?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Houston, 34, DC 3.
There's no way that's happening. I thought you were going to say 31. I was going to say, whoa, we got a shootout. You're out.
No, it's not going to be a shootout, Cam. It's going to be total domination. MSG's going to get an end zone finally for a couple times, and Houston's going to win this thing going away.
You're something else. All right, let's get to.
I really try to give the people the real deal, but hey,
let's get to the second matchup tonight. That's Mexico City and Lexington. Their two quarterbacks, have been streaky this season, but they're very, very good. Jordan Sipe with 1494. Kenny Slider, man, he's having a hell of a year. 58% completion. That's a tough feat in the SFL. Phoenix Jones, there you see spotlight. He's out tonight, inactive. Ray Bentley could feast.
Yeah, that's unfortunate, Cam. But Phoenix Jones, former Mexico City Aztec, I would have loved to see that matchup tonight.
Gabriel Manning is always dangerous. I'm surprised his long's only 41 this season. Tony Roberto, 16 tackles for loss. Mike Daggs mentioned on his show on Friday that he lives in his nightmares. John Fowler having a solid season. Max Jackson with the 53 tackles. He's all around the football. But look at Marco Swift, 82 tackles for Lexington, cleaning it up on the back end and then up front. You can't forget about Demora and Evan Miller. Mexico City's line a little bit quieter maybe than Lexington's this season, but, man, the Miners, when they put it all together, they are one of the elite teams in the SFL. Mexico City hoping tonight is one of those down nights for Lexington.
Yeah, and we saw some of those numbers and those comparisons, and we see why Lexington, on some weeks, they seem unstoppable, and it seems like they're ready to take that next step. The really, enigma is and makes the head scratchers, why do they have these down weeks? But hopefully tonight is not one of those down weeks, and hopefully they give us a great matchup tonight. I'll definitely be looking forward to seeing that. And, man, Mexico City, what else can you say? The defending champs have been off a long time, so they've had a lot of time to prepare for this matchup. So it's going to be interesting to see if they have a little rust, or are they going to come out and take care of business?
Ron Haynes, you're awesome. SFL community, you're awesome. Thanks for your viewership. What's your prediction tonight, Mike, with Mexico City and Lexington?
Yeah, all in all, we know what we're going to get from Mexico City. We never know what we're going to get with Lexington. If Lexington were to win this game, it's going to have to be a high-scoring shootout, I think, but I don't think that's what it's going to be. I can see Mexico City holding these guys down, and I see something like a 17-13 victory for Mexico City.
And, of course, you're awesome as well, Mike St. Green. Any last words for the people before we sign off and get this thing going tonight? Monday night spectacular doubleheader coming at you.
Just great to be here again, Cam. For 2 weeks in a row is unbelievable, but, man, great to be here. Great to be back again, and look forward to seeing you guys again next week.
Double headers for the next few weeks as the season winds down, and we get all the best matchups here on Monday night. Charles Doherty and myself will have the call of our first game. That's DC and Houston flexed in. Eric Vinson, Brett Solberg have the call for our nightcap. Mexico City and Lexington. It all comes your way next here on the Virtual Football Network. We'll see you shortly for hopefully some more great football action. We never get enough here on VFN. Have a great night, everybody, and kickoff is shortly away.